Welcome to the Luke Jaeger Show. My guest today is Sean Meyers. He's the drummer of the band Gates to the Morning. He's also a yoga instructor and a fellow critical thinker. Sean, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thank you for having me, Luke. Appreciate it.
Can we start a little bit about your musical background? And I'm assuming you're primarily a drummer, but I know you also sing and do some other stuff as well.
Yeah, so definitely primarily a drummer. But I started, I started when I was 10 drumming. I just drummed on a drum pad for 2 years, and did that for a while, and it was good because I got into reading and syncopation and things like that. But eventually got tired of that and kind of threatened my parents. I said, "You got to buy me a drum set, or otherwise I'm not doing these lessons anymore," because it was just like one drum pad, So ended up at probably around sixth grade, got a drum set and started playing. Loved it immediately. Knew I wanted to do it, forever. And I'd say somewhere around like high school, started getting into all the other instruments. So, piano, guitar, bass. I actually think bass was the first one I picked up, but then, kind of led to other things. And singing's been my most recent endeavor. And that's the hardest instrument by far for me. That's the hardest one.
And when did you guys start this band, or was it kind of your brainchild to begin with?
Yeah, I would say you could call it that, my brainchild. I think I started it in like 2009, actually, and had some, crappy little Ibanez, that I was playing, simple stuff on, like kind of second wave sort of black metal, and that's all because that's all I could really play at the time on guitar. So that's how the project kind of started. The idea was like, kind of like symphonic second wave stuff like Enslaved or an Emperor and maybe a little Dark Throne and stuff like that. And I got halfway through the project and was doing all the instruments myself and everything. And I'm so computer illiterate that I don't know what happened really, but all the files got corrupted. And I was like more than halfway through with it. And it was just like, it was too much because then I was starting to get ready to go to school for jazz. So I had to focus on that. So the project kind of just never happened, unfortunately, or, kind of just stalled. And then in 2016, I started writing more on guitar. I had been playing more guitar because I had been teaching it a lot. So I felt a little more comfortable on guitar. I was writing some cool stuff. So I said, you know what? I got to put out an album I don't even care if anybody hears it, just for my own sake. Of course I wanted people to hear it, but so that was around 2016, 17, I started writing, and I finally released an album in 2019. So it was like a long time coming.
Did you have some singles that you'd released? I was checking out your Spotify, and I saw the album, but there was the singles. Did you release those previously to the album, or
yes,
kind of like as a teaser type of thing?
Yeah, basically they were all part of the same session, but I wanted to get something out there because it was like 14 tracks, and I knew that was going to take me a while, and I didn't want to wait to have something. So I kind of expedited 2 tracks. So it was Freezing the Sundials and Return to Earth. So basically the only difference between those singles and the ones on the album is the mastering is slightly different, but otherwise they're from the same batch of songs, but I just wanted to put something out there. So there was something, that people could listen to while I was finishing up the rest of it.
And is this a live band at this point, or are you guys booking shows? Or
it was, and hopefully at some point it will be again, but I'm not really in a rush. Basically, we did once we released the album, we supported it. We did like a little mini tour and then another mini tour, so we did kind of East Coast stuff. I think I'm from Jersey. So we did Jersey, Brooklyn a couple of times, Philly. Then we went we went to Cleveland, Brooklyn. So we did I think we've done a total of like 7 shows or so, to support the initial release. And they went really well. It was cool to put that music in because it was, it was just supposed to be a studio project. So doing it live was kind of cool to actualize that. But then we had a few more shows that were coming up, and all the lockdowns happened. So we had at least 2 shows that were canceled. But I had no problem kind of pivoting to the studio thing because I had so much material The first album we released was like stuff I wrote when I was like 19 anyway. I wanted to kind of get moving with new stuff. So right now we're very much, I'm just like in studio mode. But I'm sure eventually we'll hopefully do something live again once we put out new music.
How are things going where you're living right now? You from New Jersey, I assume?
Yes, yeah, I'm in North Jersey, close to the city, but far away enough from it, thankfully. Yeah.
How are things going right now in the music scene there?
I don't really know, to be honest. Well, what? Actually, no, it's pretty good. I mean, I've been busy drumming for other projects too, um, but only one of them was from somebody who's in New Jersey. The other two were guys from New Jersey who have moved away. But the scene is, I don't know, like the shows I guess are kind of trickling in. I played a show back in June with a friend, his thrash metal band. I drummed for, but I think that's like the only gig I've played since like shows have come back. And I'm just like so into studio mode and writing my own stuff right now that I'm a little bit oblivious to kind of what's going on right now, for better or for worse.
And you grew up in Jersey?
Born and raised, yeah. And
Uh,
I love it. As some things about it that are making it kind of unlivable, but just the land itself and the nature and everything. Like I like where I live.
um, do you record in a home studio, or do you? Because I notice there's so many layers to your music. There's everything from like black metal to kind of like I mean, there's obviously an Opeth influence and a lot of atmospheric instrumentation going on. Do you do all this at home, or do you go to a
Well,
studio?
well, I do a lot of pre-production at home because like my mentality is once you go into the studio, you're on the clock. It's expensive, it costs money that I don't really have, right? And so I do a lot of pre-production beforehand on Logic, really simple stuff. Just like I basically record whatever I'm going into the studio for, I'll record that album and then go into the studio, or so I basically have done it already.
Mm.
So that way, when I'm in the studio and the clock's ticking, there's nothing unexpected. Because you could have even with the first record, I had a couple snags, and then that costs you like half a day sometimes if something's wrong with a file you're trying to import or a part you didn't really realize. So, but I went to when I actually go to track, I go to Backroom Studios in Rockaway, New Jersey. Kevin Antresian has built that place up to be like a real force to be reckoned with, and he's done some really awesome stuff. You can look him up. He's done a lot. He was even playing guitar for Dillinger Escape Plan at one point. He's guitar tech for the Deftones. He's done so much awesome stuff with that studio, and it's like basically right in my backyard, which is awesome.
That's cool. Are you kind of a jazz drummer as well? I don't know why I remember watching a video or two of you doing something about that. Because I know you also teach music as well, don't you?
Right, right. I graduated from Montclair State University in like I think 2014 with a jazz performance degree on drum set.
Mm.
So yeah, so I do play a lot of jazz and listen to. I haven't been playing much jazz with people since the lockdowns. I don't know if the jam sessions have really been going like they usually do, but so it's been a while since I've actually played jazz with other guys. But I'm sure I'll get back into it at some point. And I have a lot of students actually who are kind of going through that college audition. They're a lot like me, where I was just a rock drummer, didn't know shit about jazz, but I knew it would make me a better musician, and I liked the music. And so I had to kind of convert from rock to jazz, or at least be able to do both. So I have a lot of students who are doing that now too. I'm kind of preparing them for college auditions with jazz stuff. So that's been fun too.
And as far as the metal goes, definitely can hear some. I guess you call yourself post black metal. Can you explain that term?
I can't actually. You know why? Because because I actually had to. I didn't really know what I kind of just called it progressive black metal or whatever. But I started working with some PR guys and guys in the music business, like Matt Bacon is one of them, and Curtis Stewart. Those guys both really helped me get the album out and like know how to market it and just make people aware that it exists. Um, so I had some guidance from them, and I said, well, "What would you consider this stuff?" Because it's a little bit all over the place. And my first album is like a composite of stuff I wrote over like the course of a decade. So I said progressive black metal. He said, "Nah." He said post black metal. So I call it progressive post black metal. So
Hmm.
I'm not good with genres really, and we're putting out a new album that's more like an acoustic kind of folk, and I don't even know what to call it. So I'm not, you know, so great with that kind of stuff. But it does combine a lot of different elements from a lot of different styles. So whatever you want to call it,
Yeah, labels are always a bitch because especially if you're playing so many genres of music. I still struggle with that. I don't know. I guess you could say progressive, whatever, and that kind of narrows it down a little. But then, who the hell knows what that means anymore? Like
hmm
progressive rock or progressive metal or hybrid. That's another term that confuses people. Like I think I first heard that term like with bands like 311 and stuff. They're kind of playing. I mean, they're rock, but they play reggae, they play funk, and all these things, and it's like
right.
basically that term means, a variable kind of thing where you're playing different styles of music. But yeah, people still don't even know what
Mm.
that means. So,
And I think
um,
metal is, and this is the great thing. What I love about metal is that it can and probably should be this kind of big amalgamation of all these different, styles and everything. I think to me at least the most interesting metal, it's not that you have to unnecessarily inject all these different genres and influences because that can be not great either, but you can throw in all these you can do that with metal, and that's my favorite part probably about metal music is I have all these different colors you can paint with, so to speak.
yeah, it seems like it's one of those things that can be the meat and potatoes, and you can kind of deviate and find many things to fill in those, fill in the bread and stuff because
hmm
like I was saying earlier in another interview, how people who play just one style of music like classical or jazz or other styles of music that aren't metal usually have seem to have a harder time learning or playing metal. Well as it seems like
right.
metal players can kind of find a way to learn other styles of music more feasibly in a way, and maybe even implement those styles into their art and stuff. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, because and then also kind of what you were saying, it seems like if you were in a jazz band, it would be kind of weird having like throwing in like little death metal part or something, right?
Right.
But the opposite seems to be, I don't know, it seems to work more often where you can be a metal band and then you could throw in other little things like kind of like Metallica, how they were really just primarily a metal band, but they could throw in a lot of acoustic classical type of pieces and things
Mm.
like that, and they're still it just worked, but
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, maybe John Zorn's like the one exception to that, where he's kind of like, he's a jazz. Is he a jazz musician playing metal? Yeah, probably. It's hard to say which is which with him, but yeah. Otherwise, it's that's the cool thing about metal. You can go anywhere with it.
and you teach yoga right now.
I do. I'm certified to teach two styles, but I only teach the one. I want to teach both. I teach Kundalini, which
Hmm.
is, it's pretty specific style. It's not for everybody, but I think it is for everybody. But some people get turned off by it, and that's okay. And then I'm certified to teach Yin Yoga too, which I love. Yin Yoga is just very hands on, and like whereas Kundalini as a teacher, you're very hands off. So I haven't felt totally comfortable, but I'm gonna get into. I think it's time for me to start teaching that style as well, and then I'm trying to get certified when it's the right time. Just have to fit it in my schedule for other styles too. That's just an ongoing thing that will probably, you know, it's like your education never stops with that kind of stuff. Same with music too.
What got you into yoga specifically?
Uh, um, nightmares.
Mm.
Like not good. Like I didn't. Not to sound dramatic or anything, but I didn't like stumble onto yoga. Like, oh, yoga seems nice. Like I was going through a really wicked time. I would think I was 17, and I was just like not doing good mentally, spiritually, whatever. And really, it wasn't that I wasn't doing good. It was just something was like, you can call it, there's all these cliches that I try to avoid, but it's impossible to, spiritual awakening, or, dark night of the soul is a term that I like. I think it describes it pretty aptly. So I was reading a lot of books, and I found out about pranayama, which is the breathing aspect of yoga, which is still to me the most important part, or at least one of the most important parts. So I looked up. I was reading through this book, Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson, and that book kind of saved me. It just I found it by, I don't know if you ever heard of this band Arnie, Aarni. They actually they had he's pretty far out dude into some, like, metaphysical and occult stuff, or whatever you want to call it. And he had a recommended reading list, and it said Prometheus Rising. It's like a user's guide to the brain, or something. I'm paraphrasing, but, and I was like, okay, that sounds like something I could use right now. And in that book, it just made perfect sense to me at the time, and it kind of saved me. But he mentioned a lot about pranayama, how much you can just transform yourself and live to your highest capabilities through pranayama. So I'm looking up, like, where can I go practice this breathing, and it was all yoga studios. And I was like, yoga, I thought it was for, like, I'm not even kidding. I thought it was for like pregnant people or whatever. I don't know. I had no idea really what it actually was about. So I went and kind of did the first yoga class, and I was like, okay, I get it. All right. Okay. Makes sense. I'm going to do this forever. I'm going to teach it too. Like first class, just kind of knew it. And that's kind of where it all started. And that was around 2007 or so.
Mm. Oh, so you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, man, it's like explaining to somebody back in 2007 why I did yoga, especially as like a male at the time. There's kind of these preconceived. Even I had it. I had my own bias towards that. Like, isn't that for, like, pregnant women or whatever? But trying to explain to somebody why you did yoga back then compared to now, like now I was like, oh yeah, everybody does it. Back then they're like, why do you do that? Are you trying to be flexible, or So we've come a long way with that, and in some good ways and some bad ways, but we've come a long way with, it's a much more widely kind of accepted practice now.
Yeah, yeah, I do feel like over time it's become more gender neutral. Because I think like 20 years ago, if you said you do yoga, it's exactly the kind of stereotypes you were saying.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I think it's as our world has become more stressful, especially with the advent of technology and cell phones and computers and just people sitting at desks all day, and just
Right.
traffic. And I think people totally understand it now. It's almost like, oh, I get it. I know, I see why that, guy would do that, working on breathing and stretching and
Right.
all
And
the
I
stuff.
mean, right, right. I mean, these guys were practicing in temples, 3,000 years ago, right? So it's kind of like, or, everybody's, so I don't know where we ever got that, kind of thing in our head where it's like this, not masculine or whatever. But, and I was guilty of having that preconceived notion too. So now I think people are understanding what it's actually about. And also the mental side of things. People are needing this for their mind, especially in these times. Even before all this shit that's happening, I think it was getting to a point where people are like, I need to take care of my mental and spiritual health, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, I was reading somewhere. I was born in 1982, and I was reading the world population. It was like this. I think it was on this 80s site I follow on Facebook, and it was saying like the top 10 songs at the time, the top shows, the president at the time, and then it said the population, the world population. It was like around 4 billion, and then I'm like, wait, that's literally half of you know so almost 40 years ago our population, or since 40 years now, our population has doubled. And I
Right.
think I just thought about that. I'm thinking, man, it's no wonder everyone's just so stressed out and like the the drug problems and the
Hmm.
obesity epidemic and but anyway, I kind of attach that to just I always kind of associate that with any form of exercise or breathing and meditation, and because it makes sense that more people would be inclined
Mm,
to investigate yoga and meditation in general.
right. Yeah, it's kind of a rediscovering. Like I said, it's an ancient practice, at least relatively speaking. So it's kind of like people are really rediscovering it and rediscovering its actual purpose rather than an exercise thing.
Hmm.
Not that it's it's not exercise. It definitely is, but more than just that.
Speaking of the lockdown stuff, I noticed that we both kind of share a lot of the same outlook on just I don't know, just the
Hmm.
last couple years. Like,
Yeah, it's been a couple of years already. So-
how are things where you're living? I mean, do you guys still got to do you have to wear a mask everywhere? Or you have to show your papers when you go to the gym or something?
Crazy, right? In North Jersey, not so much. I have to wear it at the job where I teach. I teach at a school of rock, so
Mm-hmm.
we have to follow the what the school systems of New Jersey are doing. And with that's pretty much a mess. But fortunately, no passports or papers yet. I don't know if Murphy did get reelected. There's rumors that he'll do that, and I wouldn't be surprised. So I don't know. Might be looking to relocate at some point. My girlfriend lives in Brooklyn, and it's full on, like it's full on. You can't go anywhere. You get stared at for. I mean, I walked around without a mask on outside, and you get stared. If you get dirty looks, and then you see that same person who gave you a dirty look sitting in the cafe, drinking a coffee with the no, it doesn't. None of it makes sense. So but it's livable here. There's no, but it's mostly to do with the jobs. I think a lot of people are being, harassed in that way. But fortunately for now, you can go to a restaurant, you can go to a gym, and it's pretty much mask free and no passports yet.
Well, interesting. So more so in New York then.
More, definitely more. I mean, I would say, Brooklyn and Manhattan are the epicenter of all that stuff. I'm sure maybe LA is too, but I haven't been out there. So, I go through the city quite frequently, Manhattan and Brooklyn, and it's the epicenter for all that shit.
Yeah, it is weird because New York. God, I mean, think of how many people are who live there, and it's just. I would imagine on the subways and all these things, there's got to be. I remember when this started, there were so many people like fighting if someone wasn't like wearing a mask on the subway or something. And it's interesting though. It seems like it's never. At least in Seattle, it almost seems like it's getting worse. Like there's people outside doing it and in their cars and and I don't know. It's just kind of it's gotten ridiculous. Like the gyms, doing the whole. You can't go out to eat anymore or anywhere really without having to show a picture of a passport or your.
Hmm. Yeah. Right.
Um,
Right. Right.
yeah, it feels really weird though because at the beginning I thought it was going to be like three. What was that? 2 weeks to flatten
Two
the curve,
weeks.
and then we didn't have to wear a mask or anything like that. It was
Hmm.
optional, and then all of a sudden, God, it
Hmm.
just like they throw it. Just they, you never knew. It was like a roller coaster. You're going down. The ride's over. No, it's not. You're going back down. And it's
Hmm.
like that. And it seems like now it's just like, man, it is not stopping. It's just going down and down. Like, I've had some Karens. I don't like to use that name, but like, I've
Hmm.
had some COVID Karens. Like tell me I'm not wearing my mask right, or I'm not wearing the right kind of mask, or
Hmm.
or ask me if I'm vaccinated, and I'm just like, dude, like it's kind of crazy the bullying. That
I'm
just created a lot of bullying.
I think if you would have told most people, I mean, I was the voice of doom from the start of this, and my family was kind of like, yo, relax. It's gonna be, I was like, no, they're gonna do. I was right about a lot of it, unfortunately, but I think it still, if you would have told a lot of people 2 years ago that what you just said, passports and all this different thing, even the no, I don't think anybody would be like cool with that. I don't. But we did. They've just gotten people to accept all whatever they say. I don't know. So it's like here we are, 2 years to flatten the curve, and I don't know where the curve is right now. But I actually just read an article on Yahoo. It said, I mean, I'll just read it really quick. I'm not going to read a bunch of articles, but I'm just like wondering where the hell are we? Uh, Coronavirus cases are surging in several U.S. states with relatively high vaccination rates, prompting concern among health officials who had hoped inoculations would help curb the pandemic. So, what are we going to do? So, I don't know. I don't know what to make of any of it, really.
Yeah, it's really hard to plan anything too because I don't know how bands are going all out.
Right,
It's
right.
everybody wants to tour now. It's kind of like I'm trying to think of a scene in a movie. It's actually kind of like Willy Wonka after they open the gate and all the kids are running to see Willy, or there's just like a part in that
Mm-hmm.
movie I remember, and it's like those are all the bands pent up for a year and a half,
Mm-hmm.
just rushing to tour, and it's like and it just seems so futile because it's like all these cancellations and then I we were actually thinking of booking a tour in February, and I just thought drummers like it might be too early, and I'm like thinking you might have a point because every venue I've looked at up and down the West Coast are all like must show this vaccine
Wow.
card and must show a
Mm.
test, and it's one thing if we have to do it, but then I don't want my fans having to go through that. I
Right,
think it just
right.
ruins it. The tone it sets is depressing, and it ruins. Anytime someone steps out of their house to go see live music or see a movie or go out to eat or whatever, they should never have an obstacle like that. They should be. They
Mm-hmm.
should. The only thing you should show is your ID to drink or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
that kind of stuff is, it's an invasion of privacy, and it's also pointless. I mean, if you look at like what happened at that Astro World thing, how the hell do you have that many people crushed together, and then we're still in a
Mm-hmm.
store at a Safeway going to get some fucking like a salad or something, and we're out wear a mask and like I don't know. It
Yeah.
just seems weird. Like everything's just ass backwards about it, and that's how I just
Yep.
feel. I feel definitely a lot of lies that we're not being told, and you know,
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, yeah. If you look at it through the lens of it's not supposed to make sense. This is supposed to be, you know, obviously there's all these ulterior motives, and this is one giant big Trojan horse, so to speak. Then it makes sense. But if you're trying to actually make sense of this, none of it does. And I think playing those shows, that's why I'm glad I'm in studio mode right now because I'm very grateful because I'm genuinely there. Like, I'm not like some bands were like, okay, we released an album, now let's tour. I'm in the opposite, so I'm very lucky and I have like a ton of material. So it's going to keep me busy for a while. But playing those shows under those protocols is just also, I believe, going to perpetuate this. That's going to set the new standard for, you give them an inch, they take a mile, or however the saying goes. So I have a huge. I don't know how many venues I could really even play at. Jersey's been okay. Like I said, I had that one gig, but I don't even know where I could actually play right now, where they would allow me to play.
wow, yeah,
Especially being on the doorstep of New York City and everything. That's kind of where you go for gigs. And that's
yeah.
the worst spot. Yeah.
Uh, you said you teach at School of Rock.
Actually, I do. Yeah, and I have some. I'm like my own competition. Like I have freelancing and I do freelancing where I live, and then I have the schools about a half hour from where I live. So I've been teaching there for about 7 years, and it's been an awesome job. I have to say, when I first started, I graduated my degree and I was like, okay, what do I do? I need a job. I have a degree in jazz performance, right? What am I going to do? So I just applied to every school in Rockland, New Jersey, and this was the only one to get back to me, and it was within reasonable distance. And I always made fun of school. I'll admit it. I made fun of School of Rock a lot before I got the job. I was like, it's like the McDonald's of music schools, right? At least that was my take on it. And I maybe somewhere, every school of rock is going to be a little different. But I've been blessed to have been at this place where it's, I'm free. We have a curriculum, but it allows me my freedom to teach the way I teach. And I think I actually agree with a lot of the curriculum. I think it's good. I was worried that, we were going to have to follow all these different steps, and there is some steps, but I generally agree with, how they, you know, how they've had the curriculum and stuff. So the job's been a blessing.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I work there as well, but part time. I'm not really. I do a little bit of teaching at home as well, but yeah, it's definitely the curriculum thing. But it seems, I guess where I'm at, it's a little more relaxed. Even though we were kind of forced to do the method app and stuff, but it seems like it's hard to get people to go on those things, and I don't know if they do that at your school.
Well, that's the one thing they've done recently is this app, and that's the only really gripe I've had, and a lot of people have had, is the app. They made us use books, which I think the books are pretty good. The Pete Sweeney does the drum books, which I've been familiar. I've used some of his books already, so he's a good. That those books are good. I like them, and I'm big on books. When I teach, I have just a backpack full of drum books and other stuff, guitar books too. But the app has been just a major pain in the ass. But and I'll admit, I'm also just not the type. I'm not an app type of person. I don't know. It's not really my thing. But even the students, you would think the younger kids would be like, all right, cool, an app, right? I have an excuse to be on my phone even longer than I already am. But they're not really into it either. So I don't know what they're going to do with that.
Yeah, it seems like every student's different too. Some people like those things. Some people like reading music. Some people hate reading music, and they don't have the attention span for it. They just are visual. And yeah, so you can never really force anyone to do I don't know. I've been teaching for about 20 years, and I've learned that you just cannot force people to do things that they're not. If they don't, it's like a student who keeps showing up and not bringing their homework or their papers. You just stop giving them papers. You just go like, okay, well, this is somebody who doesn't. That's not how they swing. So we're gonna have to do everything visual. And if they complain that you didn't write something down, well, hey, you should bring your stuff.
Sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like very individual. But it's the same thing with the app, and I agree too. It's I think anything to keep them off a phone is a good thing. Because I don't know, man. As I was growing up, we didn't have phones, and we're probably close to the same age, but yeah, it's like you're better off reading books and yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. I was one of the last. I was born in 1990, so. But I was one of the last people in high school to have a cell phone, and I kind of put it off for as long as I could. Now it's inevitable, But to your point about definitely as far as teaching goes, catering to the individual. You can't treat every student the same, otherwise it's just not going to work. So, and finding out okay what kids are going to be really serious about this. And possibly take it to the next level, and which ones are just coming to for therapy, they're stressed out and they just want to come and just drum a little bit. You can't teach those two kids the same way, and I don't think you should. So it's kind of the teacher's job to really know the individual and kind of feel okay, why are they taking the lessons? There could be a lot of different reasons, and they're all valid.
How do you usually teach drums? Do you insist on kind of writing things out, and measures and things like? I've never really sat in a drum lesson, so I'm just kind of curious. How do you kind of approach that depending on the level of the player?
Right. I'm big on getting them to read because my whole mantra is like, you're only with me 45 minutes a week, or in some cases a half hour, whatever it is, hour. You know, you have all this time that you're not with me. You need to be able to learn on your own without me. So I'm big on, so it's like, teach a man to fish, right? If you're hungry, I could give you a fish, but then what are you going to do when I'm not around, right? So if I teach you how to fish, you'll be good on your own. So I'm big on getting them to read drum notation. I do handwrite out a lot of stuff because it's easy and I can do it fast. I'm kind of good at it. And I'm a good reader. That was my strong point, even in college. Like learning jazz, I could read charts really well, for the most part. I could read transcriptions and all that stuff. It was more getting the feel and all these other aspects that I really struggled with. But so yeah, in a lesson, I definitely put a priority on them reading, and it's just you kind of have to know how to read drum notation. So I put a big priority on that, but it's also important, just like, hey, know what it feels like to bang on the drums. It is that simple sometimes, so I try to mix and match it, and it depends on the student. Like I said, if they're kind of getting academic with it, it's going to be different. If it's a younger kid who's just like doesn't have quite the attention span and just needs like a release, I'm going to teach that lesson pretty differently. But I would say the one common factor is I do get them all to read. I think that's important.
Yeah, I imagine teaching drums too is far more physical than guitar. You have to
Mm.
you really use your body and your hand movements to explain, or to get someone to play on the beat. And a guitar is just more like you kind of sit there and
Mm.
they're not if they're not playing it right, or they are. It's just it kind of, I would imagine maybe it kind of bottles up some frustration more teaching string instruments because you
Mm.
can't really yell as like when you're.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Right.
seen. Yeah, I hear it, the drum teacher at my school, and he definitely really loud in there, like, hey, make sure,
Uh-huh.
because there's more noise going on, and it's very physical, of course, and contrast to guitar and stuff. But
Yes, it is. Yeah, and even I hear the drum instructor who teaches in the opposite room of me. He's a great teacher and a great dude, but he's in there, and it's like, it's almost like you could hear him yelling and shouting, and it's fun. It's very like extroverted. So I guess I do teach guitar too. I teach beginners to beginner intermediate guitar, and it's a different thing. Sometimes I'm in the mood for a drum lesson, and sometimes I'm like happy to go to guitar and just like, all right, let's chill. So it's kind of cool to be able to bounce around, and piano too as well.
yeah, one thing I love about teaching, especially since at the School of Rock, is it's kind of forced me to, I have to learn a lot of music, even if I don't
Hmm.
want to. Like, if someone's like, hey, I want to do Sweet Child of Mine or Welcome to the, I'm like, oh God, I don't want to have to relearn that solo again. But when
Right.
I do, it's like, all that stuff helps you become better. And, it's like, if I have to learn Freebird or something like that, or, that stuff's all good. But like, I mean, sometimes you're kind of, I don't know if you feel the same way, but sometimes when you're forced to learn a lot of stuff that you used to be either too lazy or not interested in,
Hmm.
it always kind of helps you and makes you better. And it also kind of, there was one time I had to teach a Beatles tune, Blackbird, and it was
Mm.
fingerstyle, and it was a kid I was subbing for, and but anyway, I was nervous because I'm like, oh God, this is like
It's a tricky
total
tune.
classical song, and
Yeah.
I think in 20 minutes I learned the whole thing, just being forced to teach him the song,
Hmm.
and it was like, wow, I can't believe I did that in 20 minutes, and playing this,
Right.
and when I looked at the sheet music, I'm like, Jesus, like, I just kind of felt rushed, like I have 45 minutes to teach this kid this song, and like, but anyway,
Right.
like,
Right. And
have you had any like cool moments like that, or?
absolutely, it's probably I wouldn't have. been able to write my album if I didn't work at School of Rock, because I told them, I went there and applied, and I said, yeah, I teach guitar and piano and bass. Guitar is probably the one that I was most sketchy on. So like, they're like, okay, and then like, of course, like the first couple of days, I'm like expecting all like mostly drum students, hopefully. And I started getting all these guitar students. I'm like, shit, I got to go home. So I practiced my ass off and actually got, decent at the instrument. So I wouldn't have been able to write that album if it wasn't for this job. It forced me to, and piano too, everything, bass as well. Um, challenges my drumming too. I've had some really good students. Some of these kids are like, dude, they're such naturals. Like, I'm like, holy shit, I got to get my shit together, so I can teach this kid. And then also like being totally turned on to music that I did not like in the past, being forced to teach it for 4 months, so they can prepare it for a show. All of a sudden I'm like, wait, so it's opened my mind to other music that I would normally just be like, you know, so it's that's been really good for me musically.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely throws you in a whole path that you probably never would experience had not teach.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there's so many solos and just bits of music that, yeah, in the same way, it kind of influenced the course of my writing. Just whether it be like learning a rockabilly tune, or I had to teach a
Mm.
rockabilly tune, and like, oh, that, hey, like, I had a young student who wanted to learn Christmas songs, and
Hmm.
she wanted to, I think it was rocking around the Christmas tree. Yeah, no, which one was that? No, was it Jingle Bell Rock? It was one of those anyway. But
Yeah,
there's just some solos and stuff that I'm like, hey man, this is like, that kind of influenced me to write like, something like that. Or um,
absolutely. Yeah, I know
yeah,
what you're talking about because I have some things that on the album that, like, I mean, I would take like a Red Hot Chili Peppers riff. I had to teach, I think it was Californication, and one of the shapes, and or maybe two of the shapes in the song, and then it totally just inspired this, you know, a whole song really. And then I show it to people. I'm like, what does this sound like? And it's not the Chili Peppers, but so I'm like, cool. All right, disguised it enough that you know, it's I never would have thought of that chord shape, but I was able to put my own spin on it and everything, and run off with it just from So some of Christmas songs too. I'm pretty sure I've taken something from a Christmas song at some point and just reharmonized it, or you change one note in the melody or whatever it is. So I actually recently did that with nursery rhymes. I don't know what made me do it, but like Old MacDonald, I took it and it was like Old MacDonald, like all these different nursery rhymes. I did like 6 or 7 and turned them into black metal riffs. And now I'll probably, I did it as like a social media challenge sort of thing. But now I liked everything I wrote. I was like, okay, I'm going to use this stuff. So
what are you listening to nowadays?
I'd say kind of. Well, you know what? I've been listening to a lot of stuff that this guy Ryan Clackner. He's started his own label. He's down. He's from Jersey, but he moved down to Tennessee a while ago. And I've been doing a couple projects for him. We actually recently I tracked up for a project that he did that was like black metal inspired by Stravinsky. And then he has a couple other things that are coming out. So like he's been kind of giving me a lot of ideas. So I was listening to Stravinsky for a while because that's one classical guy I hadn't really gotten to. Um, and then he's been working on some like kind of like hill country blues stuff, but putting his own spin on it with like black metal. He does kind of, it's somewhat similar to what you've done with the new Sleep Terror, where you guys have a different sound, but he's incorporating these kind of like you had this slide and on it and everything. So I'm not sure if he's exactly using slide guitar, but he's incorporating these kind of like kind of twangy and country influences and stuff. So he's turned me on to a lot of that. And then I haven't been listening to much metal, a lot of jazz, and surprisingly, like a lot of like 80s and 90s, like talking about stuff that I never used to like 80s pop music and things like that. Even Toto's like a band I always dismissed. And I think from having to teach, first of all, Jeff Porcaro is an amazing drummer, so it's easy to just, go off of that. But having to teach all this stuff has been, opened my mind to new music. So you'd be surprised some of the stuff I've been listening to, 80s pop, 90s pop, stuff like that. I'm kind of all over the place. Not very much metal recently, but
Yeah, no, that's cool. I think it's very healthy to to be diverse in your musical preferences, and I could tell by listening to your band. There was obviously some of the metal stuff, but then there was the the melodic singing, and
mhm.
some of the keyboard work, and a little bit of Tool in there. There's a little
Right.
different, a lot of different stuff, and that always keeps music interesting to me, and I feel like it's not done enough in the sense of like, I don't know. A lot of bands just are kind of afraid to take the risk of doing that sometimes because of
Hmm.
their label or I mean, I've been in bands too where they're like, oh, that's we can't play that, we can't put that riff in there, it's not metal enough, or it's
Right.
like, yeah, it
Right.
has to always be metal, and you have to look metal, and you can't wear these shoes on stage, and that's kind of why I just made the decision to start my own band, and
Right.
I just that was it. It's like this is going to be what I focus on. I'm never going to play in a band again that limits me. And
Hmm.
I understand it though. I mean, I get it. It's like you know,
There's an
you had,
aesthetic.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like AC/DC or something like that. I mean, they have rules. It's like
Right.
they're not going to write some like ska riff into like
Right.
it's like
Right.
they have their sound and their image, and that's a big part of their success. So I get that, but it's kind of nice to do what we do and
Hmm.
say, screw it. These are the things I want to hear in my song. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to record. No one's going to tell me what to do. Um, and that could even stretch out as far as the art process. Like, when I first signed to a label, they were just like, they gave me the cover and everything of the album. I said, I don't really like that, or I don't like this. And like, well, too bad, where you signed a
Right.
contract and this is the artwork. And I just like, man. So
That's
ever
not
since
you.
then, huh?
Right. Then it's not you anymore, really. Right. It's like,
Right.
yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, with the stuff, I think I'll speak for myself here, but it's kind of our passion projects. Whereas, like, so why would you ever limit that, right? If you're ACDC and you're touring the world and people are expecting this thing and you can make tons of money from it, then yeah, having the rules makes sense. Although I got to imagine those guys are just dying to play something else. Like I'm not sure how they don't all have side projects where they're just like a jazz fusion side project just to get out of the that formula that they stick to. Not that it's a bad thing at all, but it's if that was the only thing I could play, I think I'd go nuts.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think someone once mentioned that to me about like Kirk Hammett. He like, how in the hell has he never had like a solo album or a side thing? And
Right.
I don't know. It's interesting. Like some people just have that one thing, and yeah, I know. I mean, I don't know, man. It's funny though how everyone's different, and then you could have somebody who like, John Zorn, or they're all
Mm.
over the place, they're doing like cartoon music and
Right. Right.
grindcore and just,
Uh huh.
and that's kind of, I would say, where I fall in is just scattered, like busy, like,
Hmm.
the same thing. I would probably go crazy if I had to play, like in a band like Rammstein or something, just playing power
Hmm.
chords and stuff, it would be fun for sure. I mean, making money and, fireworks going off and playing
Hmm.
in front of, 15,000 people a night. But it's like, there's something else when it comes to like really exercising your just the things you love to play and listen to. And, it's kind of like, going to a gym, and like, you have to get on the treadmill or something like that, and if it wasn't going fast enough and you feel like, man, I want to go faster but you can't, kind of thing.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like I would love to have a band like that, like whether it was Ramstein or whatever. But then, to make a couple bucks, and I would always probably have to have some side project on the side, just for the sake of testing, musicality, or taking the treadmill up to a different speed, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, Sean, it was cool to talk to you, man. Wanted to plug your sites real quick. Gatestothemorning.bandcamp.com, and then you also have an actual website as well for that, right? Gatestothemorning.com.
Yeah, we do. I haven't updated the actual website as much. I don't know, how worth it even is to have anymore, but I do like the idea of having an actual website. But Bandcamp would be the place to go for. That's where you're going to find all our music and merch and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And did you want to throw out any handles as far as Instagram or?
Yeah, Instagram is at Gates to the Morning, and I believe Facebook is the same, even though Facebook's become so increasingly useless for stuff like that. I have my personal page at Sean Meyers Drums, and you can follow at your own risk. And Twitter we're on as well, but I'd say Bandcamp is that's where you're gonna actually find the music.
Cool, man. Thanks again for coming on the show, Sean. I appreciate it. It's great
Awesome,
to
Luke.
talk to you.
Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate
Take
it.
care, brother.